from here up to here, and the whole area encompasses 27,400 acres. That is 43 square miles, twice the size of the island of Manhattan.
Walter Elias Disney. He was a doer and a dreamer whose greatest dream was dedicated in March 1971.
May Walt Disney World bring joy and inspiration and new knowledge to all who come to this happy place.
But as we'll discover, this is also a hard-working place where sweat is transformed into pixie dust. But more than just being the greatest entertainment complex the world has ever seen, this is also a model city. Here the streets are safe and clean, and the natives are friendly. Here the American way works wonderfully. It is a place that prompts the question, why can't our town be more like this? Sure, it's somewhere special to take the kids, but for burnt-out grown-ups, Disney World is a place to renew your faith that somewhere, somehow, some people really can run things right. How does Disney World do it? With lots of everything. Take chocolate chip cookies.
We get up to over 20,000 a day. The bakery runs 3 shifts around the clock. We don't shut it down at all.
The bakers are just a small part of the Disney World army.
This year we project about 30 to 35,000 people. 1991 is about 44,000 people.
Richard Park runs the school where the new employees learn the Disney way of doing things.
What is it all about? I think it's all about entertainment. It's all about what people want. You have to have your ear to the ground. You can't force things down people's throats saying, here's what you want, and this is what we'll give you. You have to listen to the people, and they'll tell you what they want, and then you produce it. Walt Disney is an American icon. What he has and had and what we have is treasured by the American people. What would Walt have done? Who knows what Walt would have done? He was a genius. He was an innovator. He never did the same thing twice. One of his famous quotes, and you might be able to get behind it, I don't know, is that you can't top pigs with pigs. After he had such a success with an animated feature called The Three Little Pigs, people said, give us more pigs. And he says, we've done pigs, you can't top pigs with pigs. He never did a sequel. We're expanding so rapidly that we have to staff new properties, new attractions.
New properties, like hotels, giving Disney World more hotel rooms than any city in the world. New attractions like the MGM Star Tours. Imagine all the people you need to hire.
It is frightening, but it's also very challenging and very exciting, too.
But it will be no great challenge, not when all the new places are open. It'll be shop till you drop, because all the stores will be stocked, thanks to this place, where all the stuff is stored. It fills
10 acres. We probably could play the entire NFL football playoff at one time in the building.
Tom Nabby watches the flow of millions of mouse ears, among other things, that come in here and go out there.
So all this product comes in and the product moves back out 4 and 5 times a year. Need to have that Mickey Mouse and that stuffed toy and those ears and umbrellas and ponchos available for the guests out in the park.
Yet with all this stuff that could turn into litter, the streets of the city stay squeaky clean. That's one of the golden rules of the Disney School.
I think that's just a thing that's inbred into us, is housekeeping, cleanliness, and the quality of our show.
But it's going to need some Disney magic to keep the kingdom clean with ever more hotels, more guests, and more mouse ears.
The growth has just been phenomenal over the last 5 years. We need a little breather, I think, to get everything back in the proper perspective and get a 5-year plan more stabilized.
To get everything back in perspective, to take time to smell the roses. But there's not much time for that. Not if you have to work here. Not if you're in charge of the flowers.
When we built Epcot Center, we nearly had to double our staff.
As General Manager of Parks and Horticulture at Disney World, Katie Mosswarner gathers no moss, keeping her gardens growing.
Just like cities have millions of people a year to contend with, we have millions of people to contend with. So we have basically urban conditions.
And she learned the fine art of urban guerrilla gardening right here in the Delaware Valley.
Yes. In fact, personally, I was trained near Philadelphia at Longwood Gardens, and there developed my personal interest in public gardens and a commitment to having beautiful gardens in the world. In addition, we're in touch with many of the Philadelphia area horticulturists.
But out of this network has evolved the Disney philosophy for keeping the world green.
Gardens bring a certain amount of serenity, peace, beauty, which sometimes we forget needs to exist in the world. And I think that gardens really refresh the spirit and let us know that things really can be right with the world. And I think they do it in a very unique, nonverbal way.
What the hell is wrong with that cake? Nothing with you, baby Herman. You were great. You were perfect. You were better than perfect. This Roger, he keeps blowing his line.
The Disney movies have also been communicating in a unique way, and that means more work for Rich Baker, who manages creative costuming here at Disney World.
We've been watching them lately with The Littlest Mermaid. We've already created several characters out of that. The Oliver movie that came out last year created several new characters.
Georgette, I see you met Oliver.
New characters? It's not like there aren't plenty here already. Of the 34,000 employees at Disney World,
around 26 to 27,000 are in costume.
Those costumes help set the mood.
Yo ho, a parasite for me.
But so does the music, whose maestro is audio supervisor Bill Tomlinson, whose tapes keep on turning day and night, down here beneath the Magic Kingdom.
We have approximately 128 outputs that we send out to different locations of different sources that we use within the property here in the Magic Kingdom. We lay out all of the area that we're going to cover, the type of music to be played in those areas, and create actual zones that will allow the sound to decay before you pick up the sound of the next zone.
But here, how do you keep the music playing over all the mewing and barking and baying? More and more guests mean more and more pets, and Patty Kinton explains that this is the place to park them while you're out doing Disney World.
We have dogs that stay just for the day. That means if they go inside the Magic Kingdom, then we have to pick them up that night. We do have people who keep their dogs overnight, but they have to be a hotel guest.
Oh, this is my dog's favorite kennel. We come here about 3 times a year, and there's a certain cage on the far back he loves because he can see all the cars through the bushes. And it's just, this is his place.
And inside this almost perfect world, Discovery Island was their place. But these vultures were destructive and offensive to the guests. And that's when Disney, always driven by the burning desire to please, made a desperately wrong decision. Next on Primetime.
You won't want to miss Discovery Island, Walt Disney World Resort's own certified zoological park.
Our Primetime crew is eager to show you Discovery Island, not only because it contains one of the world's most outstanding collection of birds, but because it is a place where the capuchin monkeys like this one are born and bred. Monkeys that are later raised in a family environment.
We're trying to familiarize him with everyday living, with the noises, the sounds.
After 3 years, the monkeys are ready to be trained to become helping hands and loving companions for the disabled.
It's like having hands that you don't have. A lot of times I get thirsty, real thirsty, and no one's here. And she does a real good job getting my water.
It is an enchanting story about real life that has its roots on Discovery Island.
Explore the landscape splendor of a walk-through aviary and meet hundreds of exotic birds and animals from all over the world.
We wanted to accept the invitation, but Disney officials denied us permission to visit the island with our cameras. They told us they were afraid that some animal rights groups might be offended by this use of monkeys.
Good monkey.
After this, we did our own checking and discovered that the animal rights groups are upset, all right, but it's not the monkeys that are the focus of their fury. Instead, it is these creatures, hundreds and hundreds of vultures, who are a protected species under Florida law and who call Discovery Island home. But just look at what they were doing to it. In addition, the vultures were pecking at the island's helpless Galapagos tortoises and eating their food. They were also plundering the pelican's fish. These were certainly not the hundreds of exotic birds that visitors had expected to see. These are not happy campers. They are seeing imperfections in paradise, and that is panic-provoking for some Disney employees who, as we discovered earlier, are under enormous pressure to produce pleasure. Now, the vast majority of Disney employees display nothing but grace under all that pressure. After all, their hard work does not go unappreciated. But on Discovery Island, where it was beginning to look more like Hitchcock's and not Disney's version of Birds, something snapped. And in the summer of 1989, many vultures were killed. The Florida Fish and Game Commission investigated. The result was state and federal authorities filed a total of 16 criminal charges against Disney World and 5 Disney employees, including Discovery Island's curator. Disney officials were shocked.
We deeply regret the death of the vultures on the island back in July.
Federal investigators and prosecutors vowed that they would treat Disney
just like any other person charged with a crime, and hopefully we expect the court system to treat them the same way.
Recently, the case was settled out of court after Disney admitted no wrongdoing, but Disney did pay $75,000 to help fund Florida conservation programs. Disney also appointed a new curator for Discovery Island and has called in experts to help solve its vulture problems.
Wander around winding pathways through lush foliage. Explore the landscape.
Meanwhile, in other parts of the park, from the Magic Kingdom to the World Showcase at Epcot Center, birds of a different feather are flocking together in increasingly greedy feeding frenzies, as more and more people means more and more food. No doubt, after its humiliating vulture vendetta, Disney will find a humane method of controlling its gulls. Meanwhile, in the overcrowded skies of Disney World, accidents will happen. And that leads us to this question. Can the natural world and Disney World coexist in this part of the world? It is some kind of paradise, but for what? And for whom? Next on Primetime. Our love affair with Florida is some kind of paradox. That's the belief of Mark Durr, who wrote the book Some Kind of Paradise. Among other things, he presents an alternative view of Disney World that may seem mean-spirited and narrow-minded to Disney's many fans. But he does make you think about what Disney World means. And that can only enrich our appreciation of this amazing park, whether we agree or disagree with Durr. His story begins at the beginning of Disney World.
I grew up in Winter Park, which is right next to Orlando in Central Florida. Went to school there and camped and fished around these areas, including this river, the Wekiwa River. And in the late 60s, when I was graduating from high school, it turned out that Walt Disney decided to build his world in Central Florida. Within a matter of 10 years, the area had changed very dramatically. Many of the woods I had known had disappeared. Shopping centers had sprouted up everywhere. It got to the point where on a trip home from college, I got lost going to my parents' house because all the landmarks that I used to navigate by had disappeared.
Landmarks were being erased in that great land rush that transformed Central Florida in the 60s.
When Disney made noise about coming to Florida, he was very shrewd. He bought at low prices through dummy corporations.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine.
Immediately, upon finding out that Disney was building his world here, people sought to cash in with the only form of wealth they had, which was land. So they wanted to sell land, people wanted to buy land, and they wanted to build and build and build.
Walt Disney's dream came true. The tourists flocked to this new paradise, while outside, more and more of the old paradise got mauled.
Even now, there's a big battle to try and save this river from development coming into it from both directions as a result of the growth that Disney World has spawned.
Floridians are now starting to realize just how important it is to preserve rivers like this small gem outside of Orlando called the Wakiva, or the Kissimmee, that used to be a river originating in Orlando. Used to be because in the 1960s, the Army Corps of Engineers straightened the meandering Kissimmee into what they now call Canal C-38. According to marine biologist Steve Miller, the Army launched a full-scale offensive.
In its construction, we completely obliterated a natural riverine system in South Florida. We filled in over 90 miles of river channel. We directly drained over 45,000 acres of wetlands.
They did it to control floods that might dampen Central Florida's building boom. There were casualties. Many fish and 90% of the birds that used to live here disappeared. However, the surrounding wetlands did dry up just as planned. But then, when that land was fertilized for farming, pollutants drained into the canal. And now C-38 is poisoning the Everglades and Lake Okeechobee that are the only source of water for millions of Floridians. With water everywhere but hardly a drop to drink, Florida Governor Bob Martinez is backing a project that would undo the Army Corps of Engineers catastrophe. It would destroy the canal and allow the river to once again flow free.
Our objective now is to correct this costly mistake.
It's a mistake born of the 60s, when people in power really thought they could improve just about any part of the world through technology. And that, according to Mark Durr, is just what the powers that be at Disney World still believe today.
This is what Disney is all about. That technology will overcome nature. And what happens when you have that is you do away with areas like the Wekiwa River, and you do away with senses of individual liberty and individual imagination. And you enforce another kind of notion of discipline and of beating back of nature and of beating back of things that are not strictly controlled.
Things like vultures that do not fit into the Disney pecking order. And yet, in this environmentally sensitive time when canals are being retrofitted with riverbeds, Disney World may be reconsidering its relationship with Mother Nature. Inevitably, such a process begins with the question, what would Walt have done?
I think that Walt Disney's vision was in fact different from that of his successors. And I'm not at all sure that Walt Disney would have sent people to kill vultures. He appears to have been a genuinely concerned man, and when he built Disney World, he was careful to bring in environmentalists and to attempt to design a system that took some account of the natural terrain.
As we have seen, that natural system is being stressed, both inside and outside Disney World, by the driving force of Disney's success. It is a success that grew out of Walt Disney's genius for communicating a loving, caring, funny world, where ultimately humans and wild things get along just fine. Central Florida, much of it has been transformed by one man's vision. A vision so powerful that when we look at what is happening here, along the banks of the threatened Wakiva River, we almost feel as though we're in the middle of a good old-fashioned Walt Disney movie. But living as they do in the shadows cast by Walt Disney World, how can the characters in this movie have a happy ending? Surely Walt would have found a way.
If I met Walt Disney and saw him building the amusement park, I would say, try to take over the whole area and make sure it's planned properly. Stay in control, don't die.
But he did. And now Walt Disney the man is proving to be a tough act for his world to follow.